Sound check. 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
Good afternoon, everyone. As we have quorum present for today's meeting, I would like to call this meeting of the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee to order. Just as a reminder, all electronic devices are to be switched to a non-audible function during our committee meetings. I'll now go through our attendance list. If I could just have everyone acknowledge that they're present. We have Councillor Kretsch is absent today. Karen Burke.
Present.
Graham Carroll.
Present.
Andrew Douglas. Lynn Lundstedt.
Present.
Andy McLaren.
Present.
Stefan Spalnick is absent today. All right. We will now move on to the approval of our agenda. May I please have a mover and a seconder to approve the agenda as presented?
I see Graham and Karen.
Before we go forward, are there any amendments from committee members to the agenda for today? Okay. Go ahead, Graham.
Yes, I'd like to discuss the incident that happened in Oakville and what we can possibly do here in Hamilton to try to prevent a similar thing. That was 1475 Lakeshore when the home was demolished. Thank you.
Are there any other amendments? Seeing none, as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed to approving the agenda? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 4 is our declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations today? Seeing none, item 5 is our approval of the minutes of our previous meeting. We have before us meeting notes from July 25th, 2025. May I please have a mover and a seconder to adopt the minutes as presented?
I see Andy and Lynn.
Is there any discussion on the minutes before we move forward with a vote? As we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 7 is our items of information. May I please have a mover and a seconder to receive the items we have before us, which is item 7.1 to 7.4.
I see Karen and Graham.
Now, in regards to these items, do we have any discussion? Any questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll move to vote. Is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Item 8 is our items for consideration. 8.1 is PED 25168, a recommendation to designate 54 Saunders Boulevard, Lakelet Vale, Hamilton, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act in Ward 1. Kira Kirk, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician, is here to give a presentation. Welcome, Kira.
Is it going?
You got it.
Oh, no. Why is it not playing? There we go.
That one.
Yep. Trying. Come on, computer. No. There we go. All right. Hello, I'm Kira Cook, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician, presenting on staff's recommendation to designate the property 54 Sanders Boulevard. The property is comprised of a 2.5-story stone dwelling known as Lakelet Vale, constructed in 1847, located in the neighborhood of Annalise Wood North, the northern side of Saunders Boulevard, between the intersections of Saunders and Cottrell Street, and the intersection of Sanders and Binkley Road within the city of Hamilton. The property was first surveyed for potential heritage interest in the 1980s as part of the former Lilac inventory work. The property was placed on the Heritage Register in 2016. In 2020, staff received multiple public requests to add the property to the Council's approved staff work plan for heritage designation. This public action was sparked by the owners of 54 Sanders Boulevard applying for a land severance. In response, the property was added to the staff work plan at a medium priority. In March of 2023, the property was then reassessed to a high priority on our work plan. Here you can see a summary of the staff evaluation, which determined that the property meets 5 of the 9 criteria for designation under the Ontario Heritage Act, Regulation 906, which I will now go into more detail. The property meets one design and physical value criteria as a representative example of a vernacular dwelling influenced by the Georgian Revival and neoclassical styles of architecture. Features typical of the Georgian Revival style include its symmetrical five-front bay facade with central entrance, side gable roof with flanking chimneys, and pair of 6/3 hung windows below the side gables. Asher stone facade with corner coins on the front elevation and flat-headed window openings with stone lintels and sills and 1/1 hung wood windows. The central front entrance shows influence of the neoclassical style of architecture, including its flat-headed transom with side lights and decorative pilasters. The covered front porch, believed to have been constructed in the earliest 20th century, circa the 1920s, shows influence of the arts and crafts styles of architecture. Features typical of this style include its low-pitched gable roof with wide projecting eaves, simple pediment, and flanking tapered wood columns atop of a masonry bases. The property also contains a 1.5-story outbuilding, likely erected at the same time as Lakelet Vale, that has design and physical value as a representative example of a vernacular stone outbuilding. The building consists of a front gable roof with window below the gable, stone walls with cut stone corners, segmentally arched open window openings with cut stone voussoirs, and stone sills, south elevation with door and garage entrances, and 6/6 hung wood windows. The property meets two historical associative criteria. The property has historical value for its association with the Binkley family, who played a significant role in the settlement and growth of Ancaster Township, and has the potential to yield information that contributes to an understanding of early settler life in Ancaster Township in the 18th and 19th century, the formal rural landscape that is now residential, and how the community interacted with the naturalized landscape. The property known as Lakelet Vale was built by Jacob Binkley in 1847. Jacob Binkley was the great-grandson of Marx Binkley, who was the head of the Binkley family of Protestant German descent that immigrated from Pennsylvania in the 1790s. The family was originally aiming to settle in New Berlin, which is known as Kitchener, but instead stopped at the property because Marx Binkley was drawn to the beautiful landscape of Dundas Valley and the ravine in Ancaster Township that is now known as Binkley's Hollow. This is the ravine along the divide of today's Dundas and West Hamilton. Between 1795 and his death in 1805, Marx Binkley purchased 800 acres of land around this ravine in Ancaster Township, comprised of lots 53 through 57 in Concession 1. The Binkley family were active and successful members of the growing community of what was previously part of Ancaster Township. Lakelet Vale's builder, Jacob Binkley, was the president of Ancaster Township Agricultural Society in 1856, a member of Municipal Council for the county of Wentworth of the same year, and deputy reeve for Ancaster in 1857. Jacob is also reported as the organizer of the Association for Detective Horse Thieves. Jacob Binkley's farm is also recorded in 1861 as the second most valuable in the township. It was during this time of success that the neighboring property, 50 Sanders Boulevard, was built as a drive shed for carriages. The drive shed was later converted to a domestic built dwelling and was severed from 54 Sanders, creating two separate properties. I will go into more detail about this property during the next presentation, which will cover our recommendation to designate it as well. The house was named Lakelet Vale in relation to a pond behind the house that was used by the family and the community for recreation activities. This pond has long since disappeared, but can still be seen in historic aerial photos from the 1930s and 50s. This pond was known locally as Binkley's Pond and is now part of the parcel owned by McMaster University. The property meets two contextual criteria defining the historical character of the 19th century Ancaster Township. The property is visually, historically, and physically linked to its surroundings. The structures are in their original locations within its original landscape, with old growth trees that would have once led to Binkley's Pond. The property has contextual value in its historical association and physical connection to the neighboring property of 50 Sanders Boulevard, where the purpose-built outbuilding of a carriage house was built for the expanding use and success of the former Binkley Farm Estate. These two properties are the oldest physical structures built in the Binkley Farm, built by the Finkley family, located within the original Binkley 800-acre purchase. The physical and contextual value is also directly connected to its proximity to the site of the former Binkley United Church at 1570 Main Street, where the family donated the land for its construction, and to the Marks Binkley Family Cemetery, located to the north, where the early members of the Binkley family are buried. You can see a short summary of the criteria here for your reference, with a full version of the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value and Interest available in Appendix B of the staff report of PED 25168. And here is a summary of the list of heritage features identified to be included in the designation and will inform the writing of the designation bylaw. A full copy of them can be found in Appendix B of the staff report. And finally, the staff recommend the city clerk be directed to give notice of council's intention to designate 50 Sanders Boulevard as a property of cultural heritage value in accordance with the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value and Interest. The full report can be found in PED 25168. Any question?
Thank you, Kira. Before we go to questions, I'm going to ask for a mover and a seconder to put the report and the correspondence on the floor to allow for questions in both the presentation report and correspondence.
I see Karen and Andy.
Okay. So do we have any questions for Kira? Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the excellent report. It's great to see this property now. Hopefully you're going to get protection that needs. I was on the inventory research group when this first came to our attention. So it's been a long time coming. Thankfully it's done. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. So if not, we'll move to vote to receive the presentation and correspondence and approve the recommendations contained within the report. As we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. We now move on to item 8.2, which is PED 25169, recommendation to designate 50 Saunders Boulevard, Hamilton, under Part 4 of the Ontario Heritage Act, Ward 1. Again, we have Kira, a cultural heritage planning technician, is here to give us a presentation.
There we go. There we go. Aha. Hello again. It's Kira Cook, Cultural Heritage Planning Technician, presenting on the staff's recommendation to designate the property of 50 Sanders Boulevard. Yes. 50 Sanders Boulevard report, PED 25168. The property is comprised of a 1.5-story stone carriage house constructed circa 1860, located within the neighborhood of Annalise Wood North, the northern side of Sanders Boulevard, between the intersection of Sanders and Cottrell Street and the intersection of Sanders and Binkley Road within the city of Hamilton. The property was first surveyed for potential heritage interest in the 1980s as part of the Lilac inventory work. The property was then placed on the register in 2016. In 2020, staff received multiple public requests to add the property to the council's approved staff work plan for heritage designation. This public action was sparked by the owners of 50 Sanders Boulevard applying for a land severance. In response, the property was then added to the staff work plan at medium priority. In March of 2023, the property was then moved to the high priority list. Here you can see a summary of staff evaluation, which determined that the property meets 6 of the 9 criteria for designation under the Ontario Heritage Act, Regulation 906, which I will now go into more detail on. The property meets 2 design and physical value criteria. The property is representative of an example of a mid-19th century stone vernacular outbuilding originally constructed as an accessory structure and displays a high degree of craftsmanship. Notable features of this stone building include its long rectangular footprint, 1.5-story massing, side gable roof with paired windows below the gable peaks, and flanking end chimneys, rubble stone construction with dressed corner coins, flat-headed windows with stone lintels and sills, central front entrance with a segmented arch opening with stone keystones. The front entry is comprised of a single door with flanking 3-panel side lights and decorative trim below. The property demonstrates a high degree of craftsmanship, specifically in the construction of the barrel vault cellar, with an arched brick ceiling with no central support, measuring approximately 60 feet long and 25 feet wide. The property meets 2 of the historical and associative criteria. The property has historical value for its association with the Binkley family, who played a significant role in the settlement and growth of Ancaster Township, and has the potential to yield information that continues to an understanding of early life and settlement in Ancaster in the 18th and 19th centuries, the formal rural landscape that is now residential, and how the community interacted with the naturalized landscape. The significance of the Binkley family was covered in our previous presentation. Therefore, this section will now focus specifically on the subject property. The property was built as the stone carriage circa 1860 by Jacob George Binkley. During this period, the Binkley family experienced considerable success, as demonstrated in the 1861 Canada Census, which identified it as the 2nd most valuable farm in the township. It was constructed as a drive shed for carriages and housed a carpenter and blacksmith shop on the ground level. The brick vaulted basement was used as a wine cellar to both store and make wine from a small vineyard located on the property. The carriage house was converted to a domestic dwelling sometime during the lifetime of Norman George Binkley, the great-grandson of Jacob George, who is recorded as taking great care to preserve and feature the unique brick vault ceiling in the cellar. The significance of the Binkley family and their legacy is demonstrated by their name being reflected in many roads and landmarks in the nearby community, including the former Binkley United Church, property on Main Street West, Binkley's Hollow, the ravine area between Hamilton and Dundas, that is now part of the Hamilton-Brantford Rail Trail, Brinkley Crescent, located to the immediate east of the property that leads to the Marks Binkley Cemetery, and Binkley Road, running north-south from Main Street to Sanders Boulevard. This is just to name a few in the immediate area. The property meets 2 contextual criteria. The property helps define the historical character of the 19th century Ancaster Township. The property is visually, historically, and physically linked to its surroundings. The structures are in their original location with its original landscape, with old-growth trees that would have once led to the Binkley's Pond. The property has contextual value in its historical and physical connection to the neighboring property of 54 Sanders, as it was once the carriage house to the domestic dwelling of Lakelet Vale. These 2 properties are the oldest physical structures built by the Binkley family located within the original 800-acre purchase. The physical and contextual value is also directly connected to its proximity to the site of the former Binkley United Church, where the family donated the land for its construction, and to Marks Binkley Family Cemetery, located to the north, where the early members of the Binkley family are buried, including Marks Binkley. Here you can see a short summary of the criteria for your reference, with a full version of the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value and Interest in Appendix B of the staff report of PED 25169. And here's a summary of the heritage features identified to be included in the designation and will help inform the writing of the bylaw. A full copy of them can be found in Appendix B of the staff report. And finally, staff recommend that the city clerk be directed to give notice of the council's intention to designate the property as a property of cultural heritage value in accordance with the Statement of Cultural Heritage Value and Interest. The full recommendation can be found in Report PED 25169. Thank you.
Thank you again, Kira. That was great. Before we move on to questions, may I have a mover and a seconder to put the report and correspondence on the floor to allow for questions on both the presentation, report, and correspondence?
I see Graham and Andy.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Any comments? Andy, go ahead.
Through the chair, excellent presentation. Just a question on the history on the white siding that's on the front facade, either side of the door. To me, it doesn't look original at all, but, and is it wood, vinyl, and is there stone underneath it? If there's any heritage value in that, if it in future years was to be removed at all.
Through the chair, maybe I can help out. Alyssa Golden, Cultural Heritage Program Lead. So first, some context. Obviously, the property has been modified over time. It's been adaptively reused. There is a historic image that Kira has included in Appendix C of her report, Image 9, which gives you a sense of what that front facade looked like previously. Before, oh, wonderful. There it is right there. Okay. We don't know the extent of what remains under that siding. If there was some sort of proposal in the future, once the property is designated, we would evaluate, what potential impacts there would be through the heritage permit process. If that could be restored, that would be fantastic. That would be work that most likely would be eligible through our heritage grant and loan programs to undertake. But that contemporary material that is there now is not part of the designation. So if it was to be resided or painted, that wouldn't need a heritage permit.
Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we can now move on to vote. So we'll vote to receive the presentation and correspondence and approve the recommendations that are contained within the report. As we move to vote, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Thank you. Thank you for those presentations, Kira. And before we move on, I just want to thank the members of the community for their involvement and engagement and supporting the preservation of the properties and for taking the time to write the letters that they did in support of the designations. We will now move on to item 11, so our general information and other business. Item 11.1 is our heritage buildings and landscapes watch list. Before we move on to individual properties, are there any additions anyone would like to make to the list today? Or if there's any removals? Would anyone like to provide updates on their properties? We can start a speakers list. Just Graham? Go ahead, Graham.
Okay, first off, my usual favorite, the former St. Giles Church on Main Street. Again, there was a bunch of litter being piled up on the property. Did let municipal law enforcement and staff know and contact the United Church property people. Finally got a response back yesterday from Quebec. So they were going to send someone in to put the fencing back up and clear the debris off the property. Contractor is supposed to be assigned. So hopefully I'll hear from the residents very soon if that's been done or not. And the other one is my major concern, which is 711 Concession Street, the former maternity hospital. I don't know if anyone's noticed in the paper in the last week, the article talking about fundraising to demolish the entire building and erect a new hospital, $380-something million from the city's required. I have a real problem with that, as you know. We have to protect this building. So I don't know if you've heard anything more from Infrastructure Ontario about what's going on there. And are we prepared to move forward and designate this building? Thank you.
Through the chair, Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design. We have nothing formal yet on this application. There's been some discussions. We're expecting formal applications to come in relatively soon. A pre-application are what we call our formal consultation, where we'll be able to review their whole plan and provide appropriate comments and start the planning process, which would include a heritage review.
Is there any plans on acting quickly, though, for the designation? I know it's on the staff plan, but we got to protect this somehow, right?
Through the chair, we can't really speak to that until we see what we get from Infrastructure Ontario.
Because this building was paid for by the taxpayers of Hamilton, not the province of Ontario. So this is our property, and we have to make sure that we do what's right for the citizens of this city and get it protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Any other updates in regards to properties? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive the updates?
I see Andy and Lynn.
And as we move to vote to receive, is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Before we move on to 11.2, should we discuss the additional? 11.3, okay. Okay, so we'll move on to item 11.2. It's a consultation with committee members, a review of City of Hamilton enforcement processes and procedures relating to building structure, safety, and property standards for heritage buildings. I'd like to call upon Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design, to facilitate this consultation with the committee. Welcome, Ken.
The chair, thank you, Madam Chair. Again, Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design. As Graham noted before, we have a plethora of guests with us today, which is a very good thing. So as this committee knows, the mayor put forward a motion to look at vacant buildings and heritage issues around vacant buildings, I believe in December, as a result of the collapse in Gore Park. And so staff have been working. We have an interdepartmental group, mostly led by our friends in bylaw, that are looking at reporting back on our processes for dealing with vacant buildings, not just heritage, but across all types, but recognizing the work and the expertise that this group has in its heritage watch list over what to me feels like 20 years probably watching it, are probably citizens with the most expertise in understanding how this process works, where the hiccups are, what we may be able to do better, what's working now. So as part of this work, and I believe as suggested at previous committees, we've brought this group together to have a discussion with you to get some of that information to help inform this report and the recommendations that will hopefully be going forward to committee and council later this year in terms of how to improve our process, what are the things we need to do, those kind of things. So with that in mind, I'll let our guests do some introductions, and then hopefully we can facilitate a really good discussion around this, which may, Graham, help answer some of your questions about your last item that you added to the, so with that, Jillian, did you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so through the chair, Jillian Barkovich, Manager of Policy and Programs, Licensing and Bylaw Services Division. I'm here today to support Megan, who is the project manager assigned to the file. She is working, as Ken said, with Heritage and Building Division to bring a report back, likely in December of this year. Yeah, I'll introduce Megan and you can speak to the report a little bit.
Yeah, thanks, Jillian. Through the chair, my name is Megan Ridziak, Project Manager of Licensing and Bylaw Services. I'll just give a little bit more of an overview. Ken already kind of covered most of what I was going to introduce, but on November 11, 2024, there was a partial collapse of the buildings at 2428 King Street East, known as the Gore buildings. This resulted in the mayor bringing forward a motion for staff to review the incident which is including a thorough review of the history and timeline of all city interactions relating to the physical state of the buildings, and an analysis of the causes leading to the collapse of these properties, an inventory of the buildings that have been subject to property standards, unsafe enforcement, etc., as well as a review of current enforcement processes related to building structure safety, property standards, including recommendations for updates to city policies and bylaw. So staff reported back to council on May 21st at the meeting of the General Issues Committee with a preliminary report with the findings and interim recommendations. The final report, as Ken said, we are aiming to bring back to council at the end of this year. And this will be informed with, amongst other things, stakeholder engagement, which is why we wanted to engage with the Municipal Heritage Committee here today and are grateful for your time and input today.
Bob Nuttall, manager of the building inspection team here with the city. Nothing prepared like Megan, but working collaboratively with bylaw services and heritage planning. We are here certainly to support a process of making sure things like the Gore Park building collapse don't happen in the future, not just with heritage structures, but with all buildings across the city. So we're eager to learn of anything that the committee might bring back to us to inform on a report moving forward to council. Thank you.
Thank you all. So the lead really on this is Megan. So she's going to be taking notes for us today. Thank you. So speak calmly and we'll hopefully get everything recorded. And as I say, this will be part of informing a larger report back to council. And so your input will be recorded there. And hopefully we will be able to respond to the various concerns you have. Alyssa and I and other members of Heritage, as you know, work closely with this group of people and have over the past number of years as issues have come forward, but we really welcome this opportunity to try and work together and get some stuff sorted out if there's any kind of policy or things like that going on. So I was hoping to structure this as a kind of, what's working, what can we look at doing better, what's not working and what are our opportunities to really make this, what are our goals that we should be trying to achieve with this kind of work. And a lot of you have been involved before. So I'd like to just start, if we can talk about things where we've had some successes and things we should be looking at reinforcing. If you have any. I know we're often focused on what's not working at this committee, but I always like to start consultations off with that. So if anybody had any ideas about what they feel is kind of working.
The building's called now, but the old Seldom building used to be CHTV, where we had a problem on a heritage permit where they weren't going to protect it well. And by taking carriage of the file back to us, we managed to get more protections for the building during the construction beside it. And hopefully better enforcement. I never heard anything about enforcement after, but at least the building got better protected, which is over and above. So by working cooperatively between staff and the committee, we managed to get that building much better protected, and we need more cooperation like that in future. Like you guys letting us know of any issues and see what we can do to help you, and we'll contact you so what we can do to help, or what you can do to help us and protect buildings. But that's a definite success story, that one. Pinehurst.
What was it?
Pinehurst.
Oh, yes. Okay, with Television City. Yeah. And that was part of a planning application. So we tend to have a little more ability to work with the applicant in those things, but yes, that one's worked well. And I think the cardinal rule we kind of had was that a empty building is a problem. You should always have somebody in it. And I think that was the mantra to those developers at that time. No, you use it. Don't leave it empty during construction. Thank you for that, Graham. Anybody else on stuff that's worked? Oh, Erin.
Through the chair. Oh, I have one example this year where 2 Hat Street in Dundas, there was a lot of broken glass and openings to the environment, and that was brought to, I believe, your attention, and there was some action taken where it was, sealed up with some plywood, and it does look more secure now, and so that's good. I guess I can save my other comments for when we're looking to what can we improve.
Lynn?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm, unfortunately, I don't have any examples of what's worked. And the only, the two main ones that I have are the old former Greenville Township Hall and Mountsburg School, both of which are city-owned properties, both of which, one is which is designated and were vacant, you know, for years and are still vacant for Greensville. And it seems a shame when I think that people are looking at it more carefully now, and I don't think it's deteriorating anymore. I don't know for sure. I'm hoping not. I know that the councillor is hoping to have a public information session sometime this fall on potential uses for the building, if it can be saved. But I'm just, you know, it seemed at the time, not so much anymore, but at the time that city-owned designated properties that were vacant were just kind of let go. A lot of this was due to COVID, but still.
Thanks, Lynn. Andy?
Through the chair, just recently, the Brayborn House on Mill South in Waterdown, it is recently designated, and I had a concern, it is boarded up, but there's a process of restoring the building and becoming the Montessori school, but there's no fencing around it, and I had a concern on security just for a building, kind of in the middle of nowhere. I know it's close to Waterdown, but it's 5 acres and it's wide open. There was some discussions through staff, and they said that they are monitoring the property daily, which seems to be working because I check it every day when I drive by it, because I drive by it every day. And there had been graffiti on the plywood that was up on the, which was painted. They dealt with it right away, but there hasn't been touch wood for quite some time. So it seems the monitoring seems to be working on this site anyway.
Thanks, Andy.
Thank you.
Alyssa?
I think we've seen a lot of more positive impacts when there's been the open communication. We have volunteers that are observing vacant properties and heritage properties that are a concern. When we're able to communicate that to staff and staff have a direct connection to bring those items up or those concerns, action seems to happen a lot more quickly with the enforcement of those things and rectifying windows that are broken and open. And so just maintaining that communication that we can directly report something and see a more positive outcome happen.
We don't have anybody on the screen from committee, right? Oh, you all came in person. Oh,
Can I just, through the chair, I know you said you didn't have any positives, but I think all of what you've just described and your proactive review, your watch list in terms of accountability and keeping us up to date. I mean, a lot of the properties you've identified are vacant and already do have at least the quarterly monitoring by municipal law enforcement staff, but it's that in-between time. It's that more proactive review and notification that you folks are providing to us, I think, that is filling that gap in terms of what currently exists for monitoring. So appreciate it.
go ahead, Andy.
Through the chair, I'm not sure how far we go back here, but there was another incident of a building that was saved, various processes that had to go through. It was the Zimmerman House, which is on Carlisle Park. Carcliffe Park. Back in the day, the city owned the property for 17 years. And actually, it was a local committee, Waterdown Mill Street Heritage Committee, which I chair, went to the city to try to get them to sell it. They said they couldn't sell it because it was on Greenbelt, and that's the province's jurisdiction. This went back and forth quite a while, but our committee went to the province, and they came back and said, actually, the city does have authorization to sever the property. And through a number of delegations to City Hall, it worked that the city did put it up for sale, sold 1 acre around the property, and it was renovated, and it's a beautiful, beautiful home now. But it was in really rough shape, and it was constantly being broken into because it's sort of in the middle of nowhere, and the plywood was being ripped off and people were partying, even putting fires on the interior floor and that, but it's totally, this is going back quite a few years now, but it was a building that through the process, it was a long process, but through the process and talking to various levels of government, the building was saved, and it's now a gorgeous landscape right beside that park. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Anybody have any questions here based on that before we move on to the, perhaps what we could do better? Yes. Or what is it, SWOT analysis? This would be the weaknesses part. Now, building on Alyssa's, it is a complaints-based process. This group has probably been the most at monitoring demolition by neglect and these kind of issues. So this is why we're really coming to you. Where are those kind of things where you're seeing it not working? Where are the holes? Where are we, that's the kind of question. So Graham's always looking at his watch. What, it's going to be 2 hours? His heart rate. Did you want to go first, Graham? Please.
Okay, so now the bad and the ugly. I'll start with the propaganda sanatorium, the
Long and Bisbee?
Well, thank you. I'm really blanking out here today. The Long and Bisbee. We report they put up balsa wood, cardboard, gets knocked down. We report more crap goes up. We report more crap goes up. Is there no way under the Planning Act, under bylaws, under the rules, that you can't enforce them to properly close those windows in to prevent access? Like, let's face it, a 6-year-old kid can kick those windows in and probably have. Nothing is protecting that building. And then we finally had protection, negotiated to put cameras up and a good fence, and that got knocked down. The cameras got taken away. They don't monitor it. We've had 2 fires in there that I know of, 3 fires counting the one at the back. We allow them to tear that back part off. It's a beautiful building. It needs to be protected. They've applied for 2 or 3 heritage permits, have done no work. There's got to be something that we can do to enforce it, because security of the building is the most important thing that you guys can do to protect the property. We lost Rebels Rock because the building was unsecured. People got in, started a fire, and we lost a gorgeous heritage building. How many more are we going to lose until we can properly get property owners to secure things in a manner that is not easy to get past? That's the important part, right?
Okay.
Like with 3/8 plywood with 2 nails, it's not going to stop anybody.
So we need to be more specific on the strength and the security of the
Make it
installation.
actually work. And then we got property standards, like my other favorite, the former St. Giles, where I think it's about weekly I'm emailing you guys about debris and issues, encampments, failing mortar, windows being left open, grass not cut, the hedge is too high. This is from all my neighbors' eyes, letting me know what's going on, because they're quite good at it. There's about 8 people around there who have my text number and my email, and they use it a lot. Now, I've offered to go between them, municipal law enforcement and the United Church, so you guys don't get to lose with a whole bunch of emails all the time. I filter them out so they don't get repetitive and you don't see them all the time. So that's why you're not getting as many from the residents, you just get it from me. So hopefully we can find a way to get the enforcement to really work.
Any other weaknesses in terms
Well,
of?
look at the Hess Street. We don't patch the roof, we're going to lose the building. Is there nothing in the property standards where we could go in as a city and do the repair and add it to the property taxes? Because that's really what needs to be done to get this kind of stuff done well. That's what happened to the Gore buildings. That's what happened to the Tivoli. How many other buildings are we losing through roof problems and window openings that are rotting the buildings out? We have another one on Park Street, I think it is. It's on the corner where the windows have been open for, what, 4 years now? After a fire? really? You guys can't get them to put boards up over that in 4 years? There's no rules that says, let's close that in? It's crazy. But that's the thing. So can you guys go in and enforce it and do the work?
Actually do the work, yeah, that's,
Because that's something that and do it faster, right? This is the thing. It takes too long and the rot starts. And when buildings are cold, we know there's a problem. We found a great solution on that one on Charlton where you guys got the vents put in the doors and the windows to prevent the rot and the mildew going in. Great, because we know that is a problem. We got to be able to do it faster and quicker and more efficient.
okay. Next. Andy, we'll go follow the same route. Should go backwards next time, remind me.
Through the chair, I think the most important part of protecting buildings are two things, basically, heritage buildings, is security and weather, similar to what Graham was just talking about. I'm curious on, I understand it's private property and I understand that you need permission from the owner to go on the property, but if something is designated and waiting could be years for approval, is there anything in the bylaw that says the city can visit the property either on a monthly basis, quarterly basis, whatever the time frame would suit, just to inspect to see is it protected enough, and then give the chance of the owner to say, listen, the roof is leaking badly, it needs repaired. If they don't comply, then is there anything that the city can maybe step up and do the repair, and then through property taxes or something do the repair for them to prevent, so like the security itself, just for fires, vandalism, that kind of stuff, and weather, to me, are the two main issues. But it's the monitoring that if there's a fence around it and you can't get on the property because it's private property, is there anything the city can do to say, because it is designated every 30 days, we also would have to have the manpower, we being the city, have to have the manpower to do that for all the properties, which might be a problem as well. But so I'm just curious, is there anything there that we can actually do a regular inspection?
More recent, more frequent.
Visits.
Vacant building bylaw, and there is work around that, but we're hearing more, it may be suited to specific properties, so may need more attention than others.
Right, exactly.
And staff are allowed to go on site. Our law staff knows that they can't.
Okay. Okay.
It's a provincial or.
But through the chair, can they go to, related to heritage, or is it more just safety or?
Safety, public safety, generally those property standards, but it's what we write in our bylaws, and that's what they're looking at. Well, so we'll be looking at our bylaws and see if there's just to deal with exactly the kind of thing.
Okay.
So we've heard is, getting to do repairs earlier and check for those kind of things that are going to be detrimental to the building long term. So you said security, but I think truth is the big one we heard. The other one we heard is heating. And then so said at the beginning, I'll keep my building is the best building. Let's just get someone in there, kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, it's basically what you just said. I think the problem is the length of time a building stays vacant. And if a heritage building is sold, I don't know, but I don't think there's anything that says the new owner has to put somebody in there within a year or whatever. So they can just let it sit there and it's demolition by neglect. I don't know what you can do about that, because if it's a duly bought and sold property, but.
You were saying that selling of a heritage building triggered to look at it or put it, something like that.
Well, just, I would say if you're buying a property, you've got some kind of plans with it. Why does it take 10 years to get somebody back in there? And a good example is this Brayborn. I mean, it's been vacant for 6-7 years now.
Yeah, 7 years.
At first, it was all gung ho. They had their plans in, the approvals, and then there was plans for a second building to be put on it, and now it's just been sitting.
Sorry, it has been reinforced, the windows with wood. I guess I was wondering, I mean, I have a few thoughts about it, but would you have gone inside it? Would you have looked at the roof at the time to see whether it is reasonable or whether it's leaking? Is that part of it?
Yeah, so through the chair, it really is dependent on the situation. What I can tell you is that that is exactly part of our review. So historically, from the perspective of our vacant building bylaw, we've really looked at securing the property, visible yard maintenance and property standards concerns from the outside versus the interior of the building. You could imagine there are some challenges related to safety and accessibility of the interior and things like that for our staff. But that's absolutely something that we're looking at through our review currently, and kind of trying to incorporate a mandatory interior, inspection kind of, we're not sure in terms of whether it would be quarterly or annually, and then putting some onus on property owners to provide some updates about, the condition of the interior as well. So absolutely, I can acknowledge it's historically been a challenge, but it's definitely something we're aware of and working on.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting. And you also mentioned communication with the property owner, and that's something that I don't understand if that exists now, if there is some sort of, like, who has that conversation with the property owner to find out what is their intent? Are they really just going to let the building sit there and do nothing until it falls apart? Because that, I mean, it's a great property, right? It'd be great to build an apartment building there. And it's a very old building, very historic. It's got lots of history, just designated, and I feel it's not being taken care of by the owner.
So there's a bit of that, Karen. So
Yeah.
they are in for a site plan, or they're just coming in for a site plan for a planning application. Is that Two Hat?
Two Hat.
Two Hat? Yeah, it is.
Thinking of Len's Mill Street one.
Oh, are you talking about Two Hat or Mill Street? Two
Yeah,
Hat.
Two Hat, sorry.
Yeah, Two Hat, there is an application coming in. So as part of the planning application, we will, in our ability, bring that to their attention, that they need to be keeping the building up until whatever they're going to do, they do. So that's part of, each group would have different ways of communicating. A building has different orders that they can do under the building code. MLE has different orders that they can do under property standards. And then, of course, if there's a heritage permit or a planning application, then we have different things that we can ask for, kind of like our success with Television City. So, yeah, we're looking at that's what we're trying to coordinate, who's best to do what when in terms of communication back, and what we can ask them to do under whatever rule within whatever timeline. But it's private property. We can't just knock on the door and say, hey, what are you going to do with this right away? We have to.
See, that's what I was wondering, because it is designated, right? And so.
We have to wait for
does
them.
that?
I think we have to wait for them to actually either not do something or there to be an issue or a problem.
Okay.
Sorry, Alyssa.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry to clarify, I don't think there's anything for Two Hat. I think we might be confusing 265 Mill Street, and we're anticipating a site plan shortly beside Dundas Town Hall.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. Two Hat Street, right?
The one beside Dundas Town Hall.
Oh, okay. Sorry,
The-
I'm getting it confused. No, there isn't a site plan for that. I'm thinking
Okay.
something farther up the street.
But just sort of building off of that, and maybe Jillian and Megan have some additional info, and Bob from his perspective, but from our experience, having been collaborating with municipal law enforcement staff and building on these recent site visits as a part of their review, yes, for vacant buildings that are on the registry, owners are required to register to the vacant building registry. And usually through that, there's a communication line that's been made. And when monitoring happens, if there's potential orders, my understanding is most officers do try to speak with the owners about those orders and have a dialogue around it. And then I think as a part of our collaborative visits, it's been really helpful in terms of sometimes we have information. We've been in touch with designated property owners as a part of heritage permits or other things they might be considering. So that's been helpful in terms of just having a sense of what's happening. But there is, through, I would say, the standard inspection process, some line of communication if owners are willing and respond to notice orders and things like that.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. Thank you. I guess, and just speaking then from a process perspective, as a committee member, sometimes I feel like I don't know anything's happening, right? Like, you don't, because that's great that you people are communicating with the property owners. And I guess it would just be nice as a committee to kind of hear that every so often that, yes, we have had this dialogue and this is what's happening with this building. And I know that we probably do. You probably do that a lot, but sometimes I just feel like we don't necessarily know that anybody's talking to them at all. And we feel like, does anybody care about it?
Okay. I don't want to, we should be talking about things we're trying to solve and opportunities and going on, but just two questions then. How long does a building have to be vacant before we can put it on the vacant list? Do we know?
I could jump in there. So through the chair, it's 90 days. And what we do is we send out a package to the property owner and we try to make that connection. And, obviously the goal is to have them registered and for us to have those quarterly inspections of those locations. However, if they don't communicate with us at that point, they would still be identified as an unregistered vacant building. And then we would monitor the property quarterly at a minimum still. It's just, it would involve charges and fines and things like that to recover the cost of work. But, registered or unregistered, they should still be monitored as vacant buildings if staff deem them to be vacant.
So you've got the 90 days, but there's also privacy things about what we can share about what too, that we have to, in general, just watch for. A lot of that's codified in the work that these good people do already. So that may be why, you don't get regular reports. We have to wait for a public action sometimes or an order that's public to be issued. Alyssa.
I think it's really great that part of the review is looking at what reviews can be done for the interiors, because with a heritage property, we don't always include interior heritage attributes as part of the designations, but they're important. So the prime example would be the Tivoli, not being able to see inside on what that state of that was, and then it gets to a point where it's just a total loss. So one of the things, I don't know whether you've thought about it, some of the, when we were talking about the condition of roofs, some departments have drone programs where they're doing inspections from the ground and they're able to use the drones to see what the condition of the roof or higher elements, the condition of those. So maybe that's something that can be looked at for heritage properties. I think maybe the last thing is just from a clerical standpoint, we have our volunteers that are looking at the list. We have the list that we're reviewing at each of our meetings. But the only way that sort of communicates is if there's something that's really highlighted to staff and we ask staff to look at. Nothing formally ever gets communicated with council members that are related to those properties unless they're watching our monthly meetings. The actual descriptions of what we're seeing, they can't be documented. It's only from the verbal review if a meeting is watched. So is there a way to make a better connect with people that need that update on a monthly basis, whether it's updates to counselors or
something that just makes it more transparent.
Exactly.
You can see where the orders are.
Yeah, it's not that anyone's not trying to be transparent, but it's just there's something missing in there that we could maybe do better at.
Duly noted.
I just had a question sort of on the process of all of this. Is there any intent or thought about shared document by property so that each of your areas can input things that have been done, what you're looking at? Vacant property notice gone out, bylaws been out this date, property standards this date. That could all be, centrally input, but it's the same property so that everybody's on the same page.
So try and speak with that. We had a program called Amanda that in fact did that for us, so we could all see what everybody was doing. We lost that in the cyber incident, and we are in the process of rebuilding a new program that's supposed to be ready for us in February, March. That's the target. So yes, we will have that, and that's our goal. And I believe the goal of part of that process is to make some of that information also more transparent and available to the public. But I can't really speak to the details of it because they're working through, but that is our goal, and as staff, that is our hope, because right now we do a lot of emails and I'm at Bob's door, what's happening with this? Quite often, but we've been fairly successful in managing just talking to each other and being in contact, but yeah, that would be that is the goal. Graham.
I'm glad you're up cyber attack, because I mean, you forgot something, now I remembered. Residents are complaining that demolition permits are no longer easily viewable online like they used to be, because they like to keep track of heritage buildings in their neighborhood and demolitions that are being applied for. That's the best example is St. Giles, where there's 8 people looking weekly to try to find out if the demolition permit's been applied for. That was lost in the cyber attack. They've contacted the building department that I know of about 5 times, have 4 different answers on how to get to something that doesn't exist. Is there a way for the public or myself to sit at home and find out if there is a demolition application? And can we do this easily?
I guess this is where I would copy and paste Ken's answer for the last question. It's the cybersecurity attack was no joke, and we lost a lot of ability for that public information sharing. Currently, a demolition permit should be posted on site. So it should be as simple as that. You walk up to the front of the property, it's supposed to be posted in a conspicuous location. If it's not, it should be. So call the building division. We would probably send a building inspector out to make sure it's posted. And if it's not posted, they might be doing work without a permit. So we should be known, it should be known to us anyway. So that's the short answer. We've been working on a better process internally for the purposes of sharing some of that information. So I'll take that comment away. And if there's something that's being shared that shouldn't be, I'm happy to hear about it.
I'm more of the side of the application being applied for, because that used to be public information.
So
like say, the United Church of Canada comes up, applies for a demolition permit for St. Giles. We need time to react to that application to save the building.
So, yeah.
So if the people are looking for it and the public can't find it, having them post demolition permit on the front door as the wrecking ball is moving onto the property doesn't give any time to fix it. So there's got to be a time frame that we can get in. And if again, the taxpayer contacts the building department to ask about a particular property and if one's been applied for or not, they're not getting an answer back, which I think is very sad. That if we can't find it the way we used to find it, we should be able to find an answer saying yes or no.
And through the chair, yeah, to echo what Ken and Bob were saying, also from our perspective in terms of the rebuilding of the automated system, not only making applications that have been received and are under review publicly available as they used to be, but from our perspective as staff as well, automation of notification when any demolition permit comes in. And that's something that we've already flagged in terms of our needs for a new system to be able to, as you mentioned, from a heritage conservation perspective, have the most time possible to react when an application comes in and if we need to take action.
Thanks. Anything else on weaknesses? I know there's been discussions at this group and in other places about utilities and the kind of beginning of the neglect of a building. Did anybody want to speak to that or concerns about that? I'm leading the witnesses at the moment, but.
Through the chair. So this, to me, utilities, you're talking about gas or like heat, hydro, that is relation to weather to me. Like with the climates that we have with the freeze cold cycles or freeze thaw cycles that we have through the winter, a leaking roof with no utilities is a recipe for disaster. The water's going to freeze, crack foundations, what have you. So although there's a safety issue there too, if you have a derelict building that needs a lot of work, the utilities might just get cut off, so there isn't a fire, or there might not be the equipment that's updated enough to actually have heat in the building. So it's complicated that way as well. But utilities is crucial to keep a building from deteriorating further, especially with our winters that we have here. So, but where do you draw the line when you have old equipment that isn't up to code, and you'd have to rip all that out and put new stuff in for a building that is going to be all revamped again? So it's a hard call, but it would be a perfect scenario if we can have utilities remain on heritage buildings until work is done, but it might not be feasible just for code requirements. Thank you.
We know, and you know, utilities are very important. Heat and ventilation is very important. But I don't think there's anything in law that you guys can say to them, their staff or municipal law enforcement can say, you have to turn that furnace on, right? You may be able to prevent them from disconnecting the gas from the building, but you can't make them turn on the furnace, is there?
So through the chair, just to, oh, sorry. I was going to say, under our current property standards bylaw for vacant designated heritage buildings, there is a provision to require utilities in order to have adequate cooling and heating to prevent extreme temperature fluctuations, pipe freezing, and damage that could lead to demolition by neglect. But I would say Andy did a great job of summarizing some of the challenges of how we actually implement that policy and the realities of situations where we have buildings that maybe have had systems removed already, utilities have been disconnected for quite some time, and trying to come back from that and find a solution. So I would say the gap identified there is maybe being able to know when utilities are going to be disconnected from designated heritage buildings to try to prevent that, and trying to do education around owners' requirements to be able to have to keep those utilities maintained. And that goes back to, I think, the conversations we were having about trying to keep buildings occupied. So if there's redevelopment proposed, trying to use them for construction site, offices, or other alternative uses to avoid some of those challenges down the line.
Of where I was leading the witnesses to. I understand there is a permit required for, maybe I've got it wrong, to disconnect services. Is that something that's flagged at some point?
Yes, that would be part of the demolition permit application. So we would require a disconnection of services form be filled out prior to us issuing a demolition permit. It's not, I think, in the same line of maintaining that equipment before demolition happens, though. So I think the property standards bylaw is probably the big piece to the puzzle about making sure that vacant buildings are properly maintained, both on the outside and the inside.
So I'm just going to flag, we've had instances where we get the application and the services are cut off, and yet the building still stays in place for a while. And so that is kind of a trigger for what the intent is to what's going to happen with this building. And so that may be the first tick box to realize, wait a minute, what's going on with this site?
Is that along the lines of that cottage we just had on the heritage permit where they want to tear down the house beside it, and the cottage, the designated cottage next to it has no heat, no hydro?
Kind of. All right, thank you for that. Any other kind of weaknesses? You've already talked about a lot of opportunities, I've heard. You know, we've got the transparency thing. We're talking about making sure we've got different levels of monitoring, the idea of getting inside the building so you can check the quality of the maintenance, the roof. You talked about the drones to check out roofs and make sure they're okay. Any kind of other opportunity things we should be looking at? That goes right to solutions. Any questions from you guys going forward on this that you'd want clarification on? No? Very good. Thank you for that.
I'll just go back to this comment, like we're here to interactive. Is there anything that we can do to help you guys?
Yeah, through the chair. No, I think when you were talking about communication and improved communication, I don't have any kind of suggestions at the moment, but it's definitely something we're going to take a look at. You were speaking to kind of frequency of complaints and things like that, and how we prioritize entrance of those files related to heritage designated buildings. I think it's definitely something we want to evaluate and improve. So maybe at some point in the future, but for now, I think we kind of need to evaluate our existing processes and kind of take what we've heard today and see where we can make some adjustments and improvements. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. I believe that concludes our session on this end. Through the chair, thank you, everybody.
Thank you to all the staff, and thank you for all the comments, everyone. If there's no other discussion, do you need a motion to receive? Okay. So may I have a mover and a seconder to receive comments?
I see Graham and Lynn.
And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed to receiving? Seeing none, that item is carried. We'll now move on to the added 11.3, which is an added discussion regarding 1475 Lakeshore Road in Oakville. It was the oldest heritage home in the town of Oakville, and it was a designated property that was demolished without permit.
So things like that, as a heritage advocate, heritage lover, terrify me, because that can happen anywhere. The alleged perpetrator of this is a resident of the city of Hamilton and has ties to property development in Hamilton and owns lots of properties in Hamilton. So that really terrifies me. And if I heard correctly, they actually own a designated building that is subject to a lot of visits by municipal law enforcement and property standards and heritage staff that is on a danger list. So we have to do something to make sure this kind of stuff doesn't happen. How do we protect better? Do we go after the property owner themselves? How about the demolition company that does the work if it doesn't get demolished? They're breaking the law as well, are they not? Demolishing a building without a permit? How many people can we go after? What can we do to prevent it? How do we make it less profitable for property developers to do these guerrilla demolitions? Because it's important, right? We have to do something. We have to take their profit out of their pockets so they don't do this kind of stuff.
Through the chair, Ken Coit, Director of Heritage and Urban Design. I think we need to add that to our list. Fines and that kind of stuff. So we can't speak to the specifics of the Oakville one, obviously. And I believe in the previous conversation, we've probably addressed many of the issues you're talking about. You know, if it's designated, we've put everything in place we can. If somebody's going to be a bad actor, you know, we can only put as much deterrent in as we can.
I can maybe speak to, if we do become aware of these types of things that are happening without the requisite permits in place, it's not just the owner that's responsible, it's any person causing that construction or demolition to happen. And we regularly go after builders, developers, people that aren't expressly the owner of the property with respect to penalties under the Building Code Act. So we would make all people responsible for that construction or demolition happening, responsible for the work. So it would be in order to comply to start. If they fail to comply, it goes to court, just like it always would under the Provincial Offences Act. And at that point, it's kind of goes to our prosecution team to determine set fine amounts.
So would that include pipe fitters that disconnected the services, the electricians who took out the hydro, gas fitters who disconnected the gas to make the building safe to demolish? Would all of those people be liable under the Building Code Act?
So anybody we can collect enough evidence on. So we'd have to see the person there, the company truck there, get the person's names. That's all part of the investigation that would happen as a fallout.
And I'll also add in terms of, so Bob speaking to the building permit side of it, there's also that obviously the Ontario Heritage Act and offenses and fines and actions that can be taken under that act. If obviously applicable law, you need a heritage permit before you would get a building permit to demolish. So if something were done without both, obviously we'd be able to investigate both options for potential action. And then just speaking generally in terms of, I guess, the education side of it, it's been very rare that we've actually had to lay a charge and set a fine. And when we have done that, we have tried to make it an education process. So we've tried to do immediate release, for example, if someone's replaced their windows without a permit, so that other property owners understand those implications and those requirements under the Ontario Heritage Act.
Just through the chair, I had a question about the fines. For something like this, is this something that is provincially legislated, like you mentioned, Provincial Offences Act, or is this something that was a city bylaw? Like, who would set any fines that would be levied against the developer, the electricians, whatever?
So it would depend on who's bringing forward that charge. All of the work that we do in the building department, it falls under the Ontario Building Code Act, which is a provincial offense and would fall back to the provincial offense court. All the fines and penalties are laid out in the act, the Building Code Act. So a first offense could be a fine up to a certain amount. And, we're looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars for first offense as a possibility. It's not often that high for a first offense, but repeat offenses would obviously go up from there.
And with respect to the Ontario Heritage Act, similarly, it's set by provincial legislation. There is a maximum $1 million fine currently under Section 69 for corporations. And sort of the general example I was describing in terms of where you might fall within that, it would really depend on the severity of what the offense was, the charge and the fine to relate to that. But if there was, maybe as a part of the conversation, a desire to see a larger fine, that would be something that the province would be responsible for in terms of increasing that threshold.
Is there any other discussion? Oh, go ahead, Andy.
Through the chair. I'm not sure what can be done about the utilities portion of it. You'd be able to know more as far as building is concerned. But I'm an electrician all my life, and I've disconnected power from homes and replaced panels and what have you. And I've never touched a building permit regarding that. Now, you certainly have to go through ESA, Electrical Safety Authority, and Hydro to coordinate it and make sure that it's done properly and to code. But as far as building's concerned, I have nothing to do with building department. So I don't know, though, because I don't disconnect power permanently, which might be different. Like if Hydro's going to disconnect from a resident, there might be something linked that has to be related to building, or they can just disconnect it because on basically 24 hours because the houses now have no power. So you have to get it going before you leave because they're going to need heat, lights and whatever because a resident lives there. If it's a vacant building, and you'd be able to answer this better, that if you're cutting off Hydro permanently, I don't know if you need to go through the city for any kind of bylaw, or again, it's just to contact Hydro. Hydro works on the line side up back to the street, so they have to disconnect that because there's no other way to disconnect it. So they're responsible for that. But I'm just curious if you need anything from the building department when you disconnect utilities permanently from a dwelling. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. I think it's been a gap in the process for as long as I've been in the industry, the connection from the building code piece to the electrical safety piece, because they are two separate acts and pieces of legislation. If you're just doing electrical in an existing building, you're right. Lots of times you don't need a building permit to do any of that work. But I think certainly there could be more communication had. And it might be a takeaway for this report to discuss if a building is being disconnected, is there a way that the Electrical Safety Authority could notify a municipality, especially where it's related to a heritage building or some other vacant type building, so that we know what's happening.
Right, through the chair, I think it's, I think if it's a permanent disconnect, that's a lot different than just because you'll be inundated with thousands because people replace panels all the time and Hydro's constantly doing it. But if they're going to reconnect within 24 hours or within 8 hours or whatever it takes, then there's no issue there. But if it's permanently being removed, if there could be something that could come back to building saying that there's now no longer power at this house permanently and then go from there. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Is there any other comments or questions? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder to receive? And as we move to vote, is there anyone opposed?
Sorry, I just see Graham and Karen as a mover and seconder.
And is there anyone opposed? Seeing none, that item is carried. Do we have any other new business today or any updates from staff? Seeing none, we move on to our adjournment. If there's no further business, the Hamilton Municipal Heritage Committee is now adjourned at 1:21. Our next meeting is going to be on September 26, 2025 at 12 o'clock. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of the summer.